Most of all of people's struggles in fat loss or weight loss in general are mindset shifts that I have to earn food, that I can only have the candy if I burn it off tomorrow. That shit will keep you stuck, and it will keep you stuck in a body that is not a body that you want. Before we get into today's episode, I want to make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, if you don't want to miss any content that's being dropped, make sure you hit that notification bell as well. I also want to know who are the people you want to hear from on this show and what topics would you like me to continue to cover. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now, let's get into the episode. Welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection YouTube channel, the channel where we debunk the eat less, move more, shrink more mentality and focus on what really matters, including your beliefs about yourself, your body, food, and teaching you behaviors to respect all three. I'm your host, Christina Hathaway, licensed therapist with specialized training in food and body obsession, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach, and certified menopause specialist. And today I am talking about the 10 biggest fat loss lies. Do not get it twisted. We are not talking about weight loss. We are talking about fat loss, even though we'll touch on weight loss a bit. Here at my channel, I believe what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. So let's talk about that together. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mindset Mirror Connection. I'm so excited to have you here. If you're new here, I like to banter and talk about my life and different things so you can get to know me. Hopefully one day I'll get to know you. So if you don't want to hear anything about that, check the show notes below to fast forward to today's topic at hand. Okay, so I'm listening to this documentary, Cult of Body and Soul. That's what it's called. It's kind of crazy listening to the story of how SoulCycle was created. More importantly, that the trainer that helped these two women, so these two women who one had a marketing background and I think public relations background. The other one just was also in corporate America, but had a ton of money. They individually asked this particular trainer to open up a studio, a boutique studio. So she brought them all together. They ultimately created SoulCycle. And then when, the going got going, the two women kicked her out and she got zero money for it. I think that's absolutely crazy. But they just talked about how they trained the instructors, how the instructors were making 6-7 figures at one point. The fact that these kids went hard, they'd literally pop a couple Adderalls, get on the bike and go. They had a death, one of them, and it was unknown, but it sounds like she struggled with binge eating disorder. Plus she was teaching 14 classes a week and they assumed she wasn't fueling herself properly. So maybe electrolyte balance, heart issues, things like that. It is definitely a good listen. The stories are fun. They're funny. They're sad. There's only 2 out as of today, which is June 3rd. So give it a listen. It's definitely, yeah. The next thing that I've been staying up to date on is the Karen Read trial. And for the people out there in mass, are you upset that this is where your money is going? This recent reenactment of the the scene of the crime, but then the stepping back that we couldn't possibly reenact the crime. It's nutty. The just lack of evidence that this woman did this intentionally. So I don't even know why second-degree murder is on the table. Could it be a manslaughter and literally no one knows? Sure, but what is the evidence, right? They say, oh, well, there's this taillight. However, the taillight wasn't there until a few days later. And the person who found it was the person who's now been kicked off of the case, the lead investigator, Michael Proctor. And I'm just, so for those of you who are I have no idea what you're talking about, hopefully you know what this case is. It's the woman who they think hit her boyfriend, and that's how he died. But he has all these weird wounds, bite marks and scratch marks, from a dog. And she doesn't recall anything. He doesn't have any other type of wounds. If you get hit by a car, I'm sure you have a bruise, somewhere maybe on your torso, your hip. I'm guessing he was probably 5'10" and up. So maybe even in your thigh. But he has bruising on his eyes from hitting his head. And he does have a head wound. So this case, the woman, Karen Read, said, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? And that's kind of what put the suspicion on her. But the case is it's crazy because the guy was I think he was a highway patrol, and then he was at a party with a bunch of cops from that area. And if you want something, I mean, it's kind of annoying. It's kind of annoying, kind of comical, kind of now I'm like, they better let this woman go. Like, this defense must be just raising the white flag without actually giving up, because the shit that they're coming up with is just insane. However, they've rest their case. The defense is now in charge, and we shall see. I just can't wait for it to be that. I hope they let this woman off, and then I hope she shines. Karen, come on this podcast. Let's talk about your mental health. I think my audience would enjoy that. And then also I'll help you start your own podcast, even though I'm sure like CBS or NBC or one of those will help you do that. Speaking of CBS, the other thing I watched this weekend was Pee-wee as himself. Now, Pee-wee Herman, I used to fucking love that show as a kid. I watched it every Saturday morning. I loved Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Like, that was my jam. It was just so childlike. Obviously, it's interesting because it was a character built out of the Groundlings that is like an improv, like comedy production. And it was actually not made for children at all. It was made for like adult humor. But then it eventually evolved into this kid show with a little bit of adult humor, kind of like The Simpsons. And Paul Rubin, who is Pee-wee Herman, talks about how, I mean, you guys realize like he never came, like he was always as Pee-wee. He was never as Paul. And he talks a little bit about how that affected him, because even in the like on the credits, it says Pee-wee Herman as himself. So it's a very interesting story about then him getting caught masturbating at a adult film theater, which is interesting too, because he comes out as homosexual, but he was at a heterosexual theater, which I think actually was probably to his advantage, because I can imagine what they would have done. I mean, it was already crucified for that, but I can imagine what they would have done if it was the homosexual thing, because back then that was not as widely accepted as was now. And then the second time he gets in trouble, this was mind-boggling to me. He collected a lot of, I guess you would say, like sexualized like items, so like old magazines and pictures and stuff like that. And someone said he had pictures of children. He never did. Literally the state was like, there's nothing we can prosecute here. But then the last minute, they charged him with obscenery, something like that, like having obscene stuff at his house. And he ended up having to plead no contest because he didn't want to go through a trial because his father was very sick and dying. So this poor man, and he just talks about how devastating that was to him. And his whole goal in life was to help people like laugh and have that playfulness with them and that glee and that joy. But interestingly, he was actually dying of cancer while they were recording this documentary, and no one knew. So you hear him on his last day. Very sad. But then I watched Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and let me tell you, still hits. Still hits. I laughed. I giggled. It was just, it's so funny. Like, say it with me. Adobe. Well, y'all know. So that is an interesting documentary. All right. So talking about lies, y'all better be, I want to hear about my amazing transitions. Today we're talking about fat loss versus weight loss. And I want to debunk this idea that when the scale goes down that we're losing fat. That is not true necessarily unless you do it the right way, which is ultimately how I coach clients. When we want to lose fat, we're going to have a high protein diet. We're going to resistance train. We're going to manage your stress levels. We're going to ensure you have healthy fats and carbohydrates, all of that. And we're going to go into a conservative calorie deficit rather than a very restrictive one. But that's not what people do outside of my program and other programs like mine. Other people, they go on the GLP-1s and they just lose the weight, and they think they're losing fat. They go on the extreme diets, eat the 1,200, 1,300 calories, and they think they're losing fat. They're losing fat. Sure, you're losing some fat. However, you're losing water, right? And you're losing muscle. And the problem with that is when you gain the weight back, especially when you've been in a restrictive diet, and if you're not someone who's going to be on a GLP-1 for the rest of your life, you will gain the weight back. And the problem is it's usually gained back as fat. So you've lost muscle. So now your body fat percentage is already higher than it was before you lost the weight. And then when you gain the weight back, your body fat percentage is even higher. You're not gaining that weight back as muscle. So that's incredibly important to note. So I'm going to talk about the different lies around this concept. And the first one is just eat less and move more. Now, yes, I'm never going to say the law of thermodynamics is not real. The law of thermodynamics is that if you eat as much energy as you burn, we'll say, then you maintain your weight. If you eat less energy than you burn, you will lose weight because your body will go after its energy stores, aka fat, also muscle. And then if you eat more energy than you burn, you will gain, but that doesn't always have to be fat either. You can gain it as muscle. So that is the law of thermodynamics. However, as a 42-year-old woman with estrogen levels out of this world, progesterone, testosterone down in the dumps, and LSH and FSH doing their thing, that doesn't necessarily apply. And if you're younger, yes, that will apply to you, especially if you have a little stress in your life, your hormones are balanced. But even then, like I know a client I have who's 27 and she has PCOS, her hormones are not balanced. She has a lot of insulin resistance. She has a lot of inflammation because of that insulin resistance. And interestingly, when we change the quality of her food versus the quantity of her food, she feels so much better. She has so much more energy. So if it was that simple, calories in versus calories out, then it would be working. Now, I want to say something. There is human error, and tracking food and not being honest with yourself is a big part of that too. So there is a law of thermodynamics. It is true. Are you being true to yourself and actually being in a calorie deficit, which I had to have a hard conversation with the client this weekend. And she said, I'm really frustrated. I should be further along. This is the client who actually transferred from Coach Amanda to me. And we got to talking and I got to kind of know her history. And she had lost weight in her last cut. She had lost a good amount of weight and then came out of the cut and gained some of that weight back. So I told her, I said, it's interesting to me. You don't actually have a weight loss problem. You have a weight maintenance problem. And she goes, wow, I've never seen it that way. And not only the idea of being consistent in tracking in a deficit, but then also being consistent in understanding portions and portion control and quality of food outside of the deficit. That's where people struggle. A lot of people lose weight, but they don't have the skills to maintain it. So that is very important. So our complex system that we have in our bodies, our hormones, of course, as we talked about, stress, right? When we're constantly stressed and in that stress state, our blood sugar is high, our insulin is trying to kind of put it where it needs to go. Because it's just continually being pumped out, our body becomes resistant to that insulin, which can cause issues with fat gain. It can cause issues with fat loss. Hormone changes in chemicals like insulin and cortisol can also cause issues with our hunger and satiety hormones like ghrelin and leptin. So it's not as simple as calories in versus calories out. I want to say something about that too, because if say that I'm eating a low protein diet, but I am eating in a calorie deficit, I might lose muscle, right? And not fat. And the thing about muscle, as I tell you guys, is it's a metabolically charged tissue. It requires more energy to keep around. So if I'm not getting a lot of energy in from food, then my body's going to conserve energy, meaning it's probably going to go after that muscle that's sucking up all of the energy that I need. So I want you to pay attention to that too, because a lot of people say, well, I just eat smaller portions. That's great. I mean, that's a good start, but we need to look at maintaining that muscle mass. All right. Number 2, carbs make you fat. I know. Are we still talking about this? No, they don't. I'll say it once. I'll say it again. When people lose weight on a ketogenic diet, they are losing water weight. Now, let's talk about the keto diet. The keto diet is getting lean at a very high cost. Dr. Mary Claire Haver says something like getting cut at high cost or something. She has like a clever way of saying that. Why? Because the ketogenic diet is rich in saturated fats and omega-6s, which cause a shit ton of inflammation in our body. I interrupt this episode to ask you some questions. Have you felt like your body is not your own? Do you look at genes and think that they're someone else's? You forget words that your 3-year-old can spell? Do you feel like you're crying in the parking lot and then snapping at your partner? Do you feel bloated? Do you feel like fat is moving in different parts of your body? Do you just feel off? If you do, I'm here to tell you, if you're over the age of 35, it could very, very well be perimenopause. And you'll go to the doctor, get your testing done, and they'll say, well, you still have your period, so everything is fine, but you don't feel fine. I get it. I had a hysterectomy at 35, kept my ovaries thinking that that wouldn't push me into perimenopause, but it did exactly that. It did that 4.5 years earlier than I would have gone into it, and I just felt off. Headaches, brain fog, irritation, and you're not alone. You are not broken. But the problem is we try to use the same things that helped us lose weight in our 30s and 20s, and they're not working anymore. Why? Because estrogen and progesterone, testosterone even are off. They're different. It doesn't mean it's bad. This is a transition that every single woman in this world will go through. However, what is bad is using old, worn out methods instead of having a method that actually works. Introducing the mindset of menopause. This 16-week program is designed based in research and science as well as psychology to help you work through the main struggles of perimenopause. I'm going to teach you evidence-based approaches to nutrition, exercise, nervous system regulation and emotional management, sleep, sexual health, gut health, and so much more. In this 16 weeks, we have a weekly group coaching call, and every month we are going to meet one-on-one to design your game plan. On top of that, I'm going to have a completely new psychological curriculum based in what women struggle with going through this transitional period. Body image issues, boundary issues, really just emotional and stress management because life gets really lifey on top of hormones changing. On top of that, you'll get access to our community forum so you can be with like women who will say, hey, I'm here, I'm with you, we can do this together. This 16-week program is designed to be unlike any other program because it does incorporate the psychology, the physiology, the emotionality of what you're going through. So if you are interested, please check out the show notes to sign up for a clarity call so we can talk about what your goals are, what your symptoms are, and I can give you a game plan. This call will provide you with all of the information that you need, and then you can decide if the Mindset of Menopause is the program for you. Now, back to the show. The inflammation in our bodies itself can mess with our blood sugars, our insulin, our mental health. So removing carbs from your diet is not healthy. And again, we need to strength train if we are going to maintain muscle and lose fat. And if we don't have the energy to lift heavy because we need to be progressively overloading, then we're not going to lose the fat. We're going to lose muscle and fat, or we're just putting our body in a really shitty place from a health and longevity perspective. I know that's not the topic of conversation, but I think it's important because when we think about fat loss, there are many, many, many research papers that say that losing fat, adipose tissue is really great for so many of the chronic diseases out there, right? So when we're thinking about fat loss, we're not even just talking about it from an aesthetics perspective. We have to talk about it from a health perspective. Now, just because you have fat on your body doesn't mean you're going to have a chronic illness, but I just wanted to point that out there. So this idea that carbs are going to make you fat, 1 gram of carbohydrate has 4 calories. 1 gram of protein has 4 calories. So this thing that we glorify, protein, yes, we need it. Yes, we need a good amount of it. Has the same amount of calories as carbohydrate. Same amount. But what happens? The carbs that are making you fat are the highly processed carbohydrates. The carbs that are so far from their original form that taste really, really good and are usually made with a lot of the saturated fats that I already talked about in the ketogenic diet, they are the things that are keeping us fat. Why? They're like AI for your mouth. Like they're designed to make you keep eating and keep eating and feeling like you don't have control. Like, listen, why did I say AI? Because the more I use it, the stupider I feel. That's what processed foods are. And they're designed for us to overeat them. They're designed for us to crave them. They're designed for us to eat the whole bag. So again, if I ate the same equivalent in potatoes as I did potato chips, I wouldn't be able to do that. Why? Your complex carbohydrates, your whole grain carbohydrates are in their form, in their original form. And that original form works for our bodies. It's not chemically designed. And we get fuller on them. We use it for energy. Fruit is nature's fucking candy. It tastes so good. It's berry season right now. If I had one wish, I would just live in berry season. But I wouldn't live in berry season in Phoenix because it's hot. I'd live it in like Southern California. High fiber diet is incredibly important to help with our satiety. The more we eat whole foods, the more satiated we are, meaning we stay fuller longer, meaning we slow gastric emptying, meaning that if we have a high fiber or a high whole wheat complex carb diet, we're going to ultimately eat less, right? So carbs have the same amount of calories as protein. They provide us energy. The carbs that are making you fat are the ones that come in a bag or a box. And I'm sorry to tell you that. No, I'm not. I'm not sorry to tell you that. You should know that by now. Like if it has more than 5 ingredients, it's not good for you. Now, can you have those foods sparingly? Yes, but that's the exception, not the rule. So carbs don't make you fat. Highly processed carbs do. Highly processed carbs in excess do. But I've never seen someone get fat from strawberries. Okay. Next one. You need to do cardio every day to lose fat. Oy vey, I'm so for this. So we in the 90s kids were exposed to the culture of jazzercise and aerobics and the Reebok slide, which I owned. All of the videos, and they were constantly just cardio queens, right? Doing this high dancey-like movement, get your heart rate up, and we thought that that was the way to lose fat. Now, were they onto something? Should we be moving? Yes. Should we be exercising? Yes. However, cardio is a catabolic state. And catabolic means breaks down. Now, could it break down fat? Sure. But again, we come back to this concept, but it can also break down muscle. When we're doing cardio, we're burning a lot of calories in that short amount of time. There is no calorie burn after the fact. It's solely in that short amount of time. And say that we're running, right? We're running 3-4 miles every day. What happens is our bodies get really good at adapting to the energy output of that run. So either you have to run further and longer in order to continue to see the fat loss, if you will, from running, or you'll just adapt and that running will stop working for you. Running keeps you in a catabolic state, again, meaning it's going to go after that muscle. Muscle is a fat burning machine. It helps keep your furnace high in your body, your fat burning high in your body. We want to keep it around. So we can do cardio. So what I like to do is I do some metabolic conditioning at the end of my workout. Interestingly, when I did that Jen Winderstrom workout, she had us do some metabolic conditioning at the beginning. I wouldn't suggest that because I was pretty gassed to get into the lifting. So I would lift first, do some metabolic conditioning. What does that look like? I do 10-calorie row I did like a plate sit-up today into box jumps, and I do that for 10 minutes. You could walk. Walking is wonderful for fat loss. Why? Walking is great on the bones. It's great on the joints. It helps you recover. It puts you out in nature. You're getting vitamin D. You're also not going into a stress state. You're actually going into a parasympathetic state. Walking mimics something called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, a therapy that helps you calm your nervous system. So walk, baby, walk. You don't have to do cardio every day for fat loss. Plus, I'm going to talk about another part of that. Okay, here's one of my favorite ones. Fat loss equals scale loss. Yes. So that's not necessarily true. We have worked with hundreds of women who the scale has not gone down or goes down 3 pounds, but their bodies have significantly changed. I love this about fat loss, that we can build lean body mass through protein intake and resistance training and go into a cut Now, the cut may not, again, show the scale going down a ton, but the progress photos, the measurements, the energy levels, all of that is showing us progress. So fat loss doesn't always mean that it's going to be reflected on the scale. It'll be reflected in your body, and that's what you want, right? Do you want to feel good in your body? Do you want that confidence in your body? Nobody knows what you weigh. No one. Maybe your doctor, but they don't care. Fat loss doesn't always equal the scale going down. And just because someone is thin doesn't mean that they are strong, right? It could mean they actually have more fat on their body and less muscle. So keep that in mind. Okay. Next one, eating late night makes you gain weight. So I'm launching the Mindset of Menopause program. You'll see the commercial for that. And I'm back and forth between a concept because there is a lot of research that talks about intermittent fasting for women going through the perimenopause transition and helping with reducing inflammation of the body and the brain, right? And we're looking at intermittent fasting not necessarily for weight loss, but for reducing inflammation so that as estrogen leaves the body, we will see more cognitive decline, more nervous system issues, and obviously inflammation in the body. However, I go back and forth with it because I just feel like it's a bit rigid and it kind of plays into this role like, oh, if I eat later in the evening, then I'm going to get fat. That is not true. What actually matters is making sure that we eat enough throughout the day. We want to stabilize our blood sugars and not have these high highs and these low lows. And for some clients, and again, this is going to be, you want to kind of try this out. Eating a little bit right before bed actually helps them sleep better, which is ultimately going to help with recovery from their workouts in the day and help promote fat loss. But I want you to understand that your body doesn't store food like based on the clock, right? It's really about what you eat, the quality of your food, and how much you eat. And also realizing that your body burns a lot of calories at rest, right? Sleep being a good chunk of that because it's repairing from the day. And it's not necessarily always happening when you sleep, but like I'm sitting right now, yes, I'm talking, that's burning some energy, but my body is still burning calories even though I'm not doing a workout. So eating late at night can actually sometimes support fat loss because it can help people sleep because they don't have this big blood sugar drop in the middle of the night that wakes them up. Now, again, guys, I want you to think about what's best for you. You can try this out. Like for me, I tried out eating because I used to work out fasted, not because I think it helps me lose fat. I did it because I just had coffee and that usually just curbed my appetite. Now I'll have a little something before my workout and then my coffee. And I'll say that I don't necessarily notice a huge difference. What I do notice is that I can get all my macros in because I'm on a bulk. So that is that. So you want to just kind of play around with things. But yes, eating late night doesn't make you gain weight or make you gain fat. It can actually help support your recovery and all the things I talked about. All right. Next lie is if I work out, I can eat whatever I want. Workout, exercise does not elicit fat loss. Exercise builds, especially resistance training. Cardio does not build. Strength training builds. Builds what? Lean mass, muscle. It really the only thing it has to do with fat loss is the more muscle you have, the higher your basal metabolic rate, your resting metabolism, meaning that you're a little bit, like I said earlier, a better fat burning machine. But exercise doesn't target, strength training specifically doesn't target fat loss, right? It targets an anabolic state, which is building. And that's really important. Now, when you exercise, I used to do this shit all the time where I'd go to F45 and do 2 classes in a row thinking I put myself in this kind of depleted state. So then I can go out and have brunch and the mimosas and do all the things. And it was fine until that all added up. Now, I will say that it took time for that to catch up to me. But once it caught up. And I was like, shit, it caught up to me again. And so you can outrun it. And I will tell you, as you get older, it will catch up sooner. So this concept of I worked out so I can eat whatever I want, number one, is a myth, because what your watch says and what you actually burned is not true. Unless you are in a laboratory with prongs all over you and you're doing a test with actual scientists, you're not going to know how much you burn in a workout. What that cardio equipment says, what your Oura ring or your watch says, is highly inaccurate. Then you think, oh, well, my watch said I burned 800 calories. Or you look at the total day and you say, oh, my watch says I burned 3,000 calories. I'm going to eat 2,500 calories. That puts me in a 500 calorie deficit. That's not how it works. What we do as nutrition coaches is we look at your age, height, current weight, and we get a guesstimate of where you're at. Now, those calculations don't take into account medications you're on, hormones, your insulin levels. I mean, insulin's a hormone, your stress. Doesn't take into account any of that. So if you're working with the trainer who just calculates, you're just going to get this random number. However, for this conversation, I'm going to use the random number. So age, height, sex, current weight. That gives me your basal metabolic rate. Then we have a multiplier based on your activity level. Now, when I'm looking at activity level, I'm not looking at a day-to-day basis. I'm looking at the average activity that you do on a weekly basis. And I'm going to assume that you're going to do this activity for 4 weeks. That multiplier then multiplies times the BMR rate, and we get your total daily energy expenditure, how much you burn in a day. Then if we want to lose fat, we would go into a conservative cut, maybe 200, 250 calories, and we do it that way. So why am I telling you this? So say that your total daily energy expenditure is 2,000 calories, and then you see on your watch that you burn 3,000 calories, and you eat at 2,500. Guess what? You're eating in a surplus. Now, one day, is it going to kill you? No. But if you're doing that over and over again, especially for those of you who have on the calories burned on your MyFitnessPal, turn that shit off. That, I bet you if you turn that off, you will lose weight instantly. Not instantly, but over time. You can't, it's just not how it works. Okay. Also, I want to keep this lie going, because if you think you have to earn food, then that's a mindset shift that's going to keep you stuck. Most of all of people's struggles in fat loss or weight loss in general are mindset shifts. That I have to earn food, that I can only have the candy if I burn it off tomorrow. That shit will keep you stuck, and it will keep you stuck in a body that is not a body that you want. All right, next slide, diet. A diet is temporary. Oh, what a good one. It is not. Like I said with my client, I said to her, you don't have a fat loss issue. You have a weight maintenance issue. And a lot, so 90% of humans, or at least people in the United States, have a weight maintenance issue. They go on the diet and they do the really hard thing, and they restrict and they white knuckle their way through, thinking, I only have a couple more months. This is an 8-week challenge. I can do it for 8 weeks. And then when I'm done, I'm going to have all the foods that I want. Guess what? I've done that too. I did an 8-week challenge with F45. I was eating absolutely nothing. I felt like absolute dog shit. And I thought, I can do anything for 8 weeks. I can do anything for 8 weeks. And I did it. And then I didn't have a plan out of it. No one reverse dieted me. This is before like reverse diets were really being talked about at the time. And so, actually, no, I think I tried my first reverse and I struggled, just like a lot of clients do. And so we've got to think about it as a lifestyle, right? Now, you're not going to live in a deficit for your life, thank God. However, you need to be hitting certain micronutrients and macronutrients. You need to ensure that you're eating within whatever your goals are. So again, I'm in a slight bulk. So I'm eating 2,380 calories currently. Whereas if I was at maintenance, I'd be around 2,200. And it's just as important for you to have a good understanding of your portions, the quality of your food, obviously the quantity of your food, but the quality of what you're eating, and understanding when you're actually hungry and stopping when you're actually full. Now, the kicker with that is the The latter can only happen if the former happens. You can't stop eating when you're full if you don't start eating when you're hungry. That's a really important concept. So this diet is temporary. It's a white knuckle thing, is killing us. It's why 2/3 of our population are overweight or obese. And we need to realize that eating well and consistently well is the name of the game. And that is going to help us not only lose the fat, but maintain that fat loss so we can be healthier over time. All right, next one is you can spot reduce fat. Now, I kind of already touched on this, but people will be like, what exercises should I do? I want to get rid of this muffin top. I want to get rid of this belly pooch. No, you can't spot reduce fat. Fat loss comes from a calorie deficit. Say it with me. Fat loss comes from a calorie deficit. Say, Christina, we're tired of hearing this. I don't care. You can increase muscle in an area of your body. So I do this with clients where I'll say, okay, what body part do you want to stand out? And when I'm creating their custom workouts, very important that you heard me say custom workouts. Sorry to some of my clients who weren't receiving that. Not for me. When I'm creating custom workouts, I'm going to say, okay, you want your glutes to be more defined. We want to define our shoulders. Usually it's the similar areas, core, shoulders, glutes, sometimes like triceps, right? And we can create muscle. We can build muscle in those areas. Now, again, if there's a layer of fat over that, we go into a calorie deficit to lose that layer of fat and expose that muscle that we've gained in that maintenance phase. Now, again, to gain muscle, even this is across the board. We need to be eating slightly higher because we're building something. So gaining muscle is going to happen in maintenance or surplus. Losing body fat is going to happen in a conservative calorie deficit. Why do I keep saying conservative? Because again, if you restrict too much, you can lose muscle and fat, ultimately increasing your body fat, which is what we're trying to not do here. Next lie, we've got 2 more, guys. Any weight loss is good weight loss because losing weight again through extreme calorie restrictions, but then also like stress. I've lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks after a breakup once because I could not eat and I had to teach fitness classes. I remember being in my fitness classes and praying I didn't fucking pass out. And when I say I couldn't eat, I was standing, my stress was so high. I was so depressed. I was standing over an English muffin and gagging my way through trying to eat it. I'm not, fuck it. Like, I wish I could have filmed it, but luckily back then we didn't have cameras that filmed. Did we? I don't think I did. Maybe we did. It was like 2012. Anyway, losing weight through stress, losing weight through a disease, but also the GLP-1s. Again, people think, well, I'm losing weight. This is great. You are a thinner, flabbier version of yourself if you don't do it correctly. If you're just letting the magic of the GLP-1 to curb your appetite, because it slows down that hedonistic part of our brain and says you're not hungry and is not looking for that reward from food. And you will eat less. It'll slow gastric emptying, so you'll feel fuller longer. But if you're not paying attention to the quality of your food, protein intake, strength training, as we talked about, you're going to lose a lot of muscle. And you are going to put yourself in such a metabolically challenging place coming out of that GLP-1. And if you're someone who can afford to use it for the rest of your life, which I think they're cutting down on compounded pharmacies and these more affordable options, then you don't have to worry about it. But for those of you who are just trying to use it to lose those extra 10, 20 pounds, you really need to have a good plan if you're going to do that. Plus, if you're using a GLP-1 to lose 10, 20 pounds, I would look at other options first. An anti-inflammatory diet, again, quality of food, fiber, things like that. So any weight loss is not good weight loss because my dad is very sick and he's very frail. That's not good weight loss. I was stressed, super stressed, couldn't eat. And it's funny because I remember being happy that I lost all this weight and like trying so hard to keep it off. You could lose weight by chopping off your leg. You could lose weight by shitting your face out with a stomach bug. Not any weight loss is good weight loss. All right. And the last one is there's a magic fix. There's a right pill, a right potion, or a right shot. This just goes back to GLP-1s, right? That yes, there is so many benefits. I love the benefits for women with PCOS. I love the benefits for women with endometriosis. I love the benefits for someone who has insulin resistance or who has obviously diabetes. Do I love it for someone who's just trying to lose weight? No, because as I'm talking about a lot of the things you can accomplish through a GLP-1, you should learn on your own, because unless you, again, can afford it for the rest of your life, you need to learn why you can't maintain fat loss or weight loss. Is it lifestyle? Is it a mindset and all or nothing thinking? Are there things you're doing that you're considering like fine that aren't fine? So I don't hate it, but it's not a magic pill, because if you solely just use that, you're putting yourself in an unhealthy place. As we've said this entire episode, losing muscle, right? You're not dealing with the underlying issues to maybe what your relationship is like with your body image, your self-worth, food, emotions, boundaries, perfectionism, right? We're not doing that work. Taking the pills is not going to help that. If we lose a lot of muscle mass, we go into sarcopenia. We could lose bone mass through that, and we're just not healthier. This whole conversation started with me talking about like fat loss as being something that can reduce all-cause mortality and obviously reduce a lot of the symptoms from these top 10 chronic diseases. However, we also need to look at, if we're looking at fat loss, yes, a lot of you want to lose fat for aesthetic reasons, but we also need to look at it from a health perspective. If we're looking at it from a health perspective, then we have to look at all health, physical and mental. Physical, mental, emotional, cognitive, social, spiritual health, right? So the juice cleanses, what are they doing? They're pumping you full of sugar, right? You're not eating. Of course, you're going to lose weight. You're in a calorie deficit, right? The shots, yes, lots of benefits for certain people. However, they're not the end all be all. So also, yes, you'll lose fat, but you may also lose a good amount of muscle. So those are the 10. So just to go back to them, just eat less and move more. We debunked that. Yes, the law of thermodynamics is real, but we need to take into account hormones, stress level, lifestyle, all of that. Carbs make you fat. No, they don't. The carbs that make you fat are the highly processed carbohydrates that are designed to make you crave them. You need to do more cardio every day. Cardio is catabolic. It actually breaks it down. And once you get rid of that heavily charged tissue called muscle, because it burns a lot of energy. Cardio is wonderful for cardiovascular health, but walking is a great way to increase cardiovascular health, or doing just short bouts of high intensity movement. Fat loss equals scale loss. Not always. You could increase your muscle mass and decrease fat simultaneously if you're doing it correctly, meaning that if you increase by 10 pounds of muscle, decrease by 10 pounds of fat, the scale's not going to change, but your body's going to look very differently. Eating late at night makes you gain weight. No, it does not. Our bodies use that energy however it wants, and 60 to 70% of that energy is used at rest. If I work out, I can eat whatever I want. No, you can't. Stop looking at your Apple Watch. Work with a coach who will actually help you figure out your maintenance. We have an idea with those calculations of what your total daily energy expenditure is, but most times I'm using that as a baseline, and then I'm working with my client to actually find their true level of maintenance, and then we work on that number, not the number of how many calories we burned on our watch. A diet is temporary. No, it's not. A diet is how you eat, and learning how to eat, creating a foundation around how you eat, the quality food, protein, carbs, fats, all of the macronutrients and micronutrients. And then all you do is turn that down when we want to lose a bit of body fat, and then turn it back up when we want to maintain. If we want to build some muscle, we turn it up a little bit more. But everything that we're putting in our mouth stays relatively the same. You can spot reduce fat. No, we cannot. We can increase muscle mass in certain areas, but we will need to go into a calorie deficit to spot reduce fat. Any weight loss is good weight loss. No, it is not. when we are sick, when we are stressed, when we are losing our muscle mass, that is not good. That is not healthy. And we need to get off of this concept of, oh, look at how much weight I lost. You may have just taken a shit and lost weight. You didn't earn that. And again, there's no magic fix here. There's no magic fix for fat loss. Yes, there are shots that will help you lose weight on the scale, but again, there's still lifestyle changes that you need to implement in an effort to do it the healthiest way. So that's it. If I missed one, I want you to put it in the comments below. Don't forget, guys, I've got the Mindset of Menopause launching. I am only taking 20 clients for that. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes below. We have a paid in full option that is discounted, and then we have a month-to-month option. This is my first time since starting this program offering something month to month in this way without a subscription down payment. So that is important. Other than that, if you haven't already, make sure to follow or subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And I'm going to leave you like I always do and remind you, what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. Bye-bye.